Thank you for all being here on this webinar, and thank you for all the participants that are here. Before we dive into the webinar, we will be allowing some question and answer at the very end. So maybe we'll leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end. Also, just to reiterate, this webinar is sponsored by IB. I will also put a link at the end of this webinar in the Q&A section if you want to learn more about the IB and about the diploma program. Right, so let's get into it. The title of the webinar is Developing 21st Century Learners Through the IB Diploma Program. So I think we should set the stage. Who is a 21st century learner? I'm going to go down to Kevin and ask, can you help us to understand how we would define 21st century skills and a 21st century learner?
Sure. I can provide my own personal definition. I would say foremost would be independence. Independence of mind and ability to work independently. Also analytical ability, to be able to discern underlying structures and systems that are characteristic of complex problems. The ability to learn how to learn, I think, will be critical for the 21st century. We already have for many decades seen that graduates of universities and those who enter the workforce may change jobs many times throughout their career and must be able to adapt over time. I think also important will be the ability to collaborate and will become increasingly important. The ability to formulate questions and to structure processes of inquiry independently. And finally, I would say comfort with ambiguity, to deal with ambiguity and to be able to discern ways in which to move forward in the face of very complex problems that face us globally in the 21st century.
Yeah, I like the word ambiguity, because if the last couple of years have taught us anything, it is that we don't have certainty, and we definitely are dealing with sort of unfolding unknowns. Dina, I want to come to you and just ask, what makes the IB learner more equipped as 21st century learners?
The IB learner is equipped with these 21st century skills because of our IB programs. Our IB programs are frameworks that develop the child, the student holistically. So we're looking at not only delivering content and preparing students content-wise, but we're also looking at developing students who flourish physically, intellectually, emotionally, and ethically. Our programs, our curricula, our frameworks are very cutting edge, innovative, and they are developing students so that they're equipped for the world today. So it's not only transfer of knowledge, but it's moving past the knowledge transfer to knowledge use, to analysis, to innovation, so that these students have the skills and attitudes that allow them to lead happy and meaningful lives. Each of our programs, we have 4 different programs. We're talking about the diploma program today, but all of our programs prepare these students. They prepare citizens of tomorrow who are ready to step up as leaders and contribute to the world. So we're educating the whole child. We're not only delivering content, we are trying to build on the students' own individual strengths and equipping them with these skills so that they take responsibility for their own learning and they can actually move themselves forward and be independent, which is one of the skills that Professor Kevin has highlighted, which is independence. So our curriculum is deliberately designed to be flexible. It empowers students and it empowers the teachers and the schools to tailor an education that is appropriate for the students culturally, in the context of what their needs are, what their interests are, to develop students that are aware of local and global contexts and are able to transfer their learning to real world experiences. So that's what our IB programs do. And that's why an IB student is equipped with these 21st century skills.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it's only fitting for us to go over to Glenn and talk a little bit more about, because what you just described is really ideal in its theory, because, you know, definitely we want our learners to be 21st century learners. We want them to have these skills. But Glenn, you're in schools and you're with one of the leading school groups in this country. In fact, you're with Talim. And so you can see on a day-to-day basis through your work what this looks like. What does it look like? Can you tell us, you know, explicitly what it looks like in your schools, having worked with the IB program?
Absolutely. I think, you know, one of the things about the IB is that there are real tangible examples of student taking action. We'll talk more about that when we look at the core, but on a weekly basis, we're exploring ways in which our students are problem solving, that they're looking at the world and how they can approach it in a different way. It's not about delivering just knowledge and digesting knowledge. It's about reflection. It's about self-management, social skills. It's about thinking and communication, all of what we call the ATLs that are part of the DB program, which make them effective thinkers and able to solve real life problems. I was with a group of students on Friday at a student leadership retreat. We take all of our students who are senior leaders away to learn some skills about strategic planning and problem solving, etc., as a Talim group. And the group of students, they were reflecting on what they're taught and what is developed within their schools, and seeing the skills come out from the IB students who are able to articulate the importance of real world connections with the curriculum, and have come up with an action plan in order to address that by developing or working towards developing some life skills units that can be delivered across schools for middle learners and primary school students, so that they're better able to cope with real world scenarios is a classic example of, but you see them on a weekly basis of what our students are able to do when they work through the IB program. But it's not only in the DP program, it's evident in MYP, and we see great examples of that in the personal project. We see it in exhibition in the PYP. It's wonderful to see students solving problems on a daily basis.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to go back to a word that you used, which is very important in the IB, which is explicit. So all of these skills are developed explicitly in every lesson, every day, in every subject, in every extracurricular activity. So it doesn't happen by chance. There is careful planning to explicitly develop these skills, and that's important. That's what differentiates an IB World School and an IB student. And that's why you have these students like Moza, and you'll hear from Moza in a bit, that go to universities, and why professors like Professor Kevin really appreciate having these students in their halls, in their lectures.
Yeah, you actually quite nicely led into what I was going to do next, which was to talk to Professor Kevin about the fact that when these students come and it's time for them to matriculate to university, what makes an IB World student, a student who's done the diploma, what makes them attractive to tertiary institutions like the one at which you work?
I think certainly and primarily it's the ability to deal with the context that's defined by academic rigor, the ability to take on high-level complex work. And I think what we've found is that the IB Diploma prepared students, certainly for that it is focused on the development of analytical skills. And I think if you look across the Gulf region, there is divergence and diversity in secondary education institutions, and students are subject to a variety of systems and approaches. And I think that one of the things about the IB is that I would say we see the students as a consistency of rigor, but flexibility in approach that Dina referred to. So that it's not about one standard. The model is standard, but the approach to the model can vary. And I think that in itself gives rise to providing this ability to be independent while maintaining that degree of academic rigor that I think will ensure success at the university level.
Yeah, and that independence is exactly what we want to inculcate in our students. So Moza, how did the IB Diploma, you studying the IB Diploma, how did it prepare you for your next step
Students who go through the DP program develop skills for life and become strongly independent with the finest version of themselves. And the way the DP program is designed, it provides depth and breadth of knowledge, which prepares the students to be independent and build a strong foundation for their enrollment in any university. And in addition to that, it provides the students a wide range of subject choices, which also gives them the flexibility and the opportunity to make their own choices. So, therefore, having the ownership of my learning and being responsible for my decisions made me believe in my choices. And I also learned how to reflect and think through different perspectives while taking decisions in the university.
Brilliant. I mean, if your eloquence is anything to go by, you really have gained lots of skills to be in front of such a large audience and to be speaking so well is testament to the IB Diploma program. So well done. Good on you. Professor Mitchell, I wanted to ask you about what is the importance of students coming into university having really strong research and writing skills? Because those are some of the things that the IB Diploma prepares students for. But why is that so important when entering university?
I think I would go back to one of the characteristics that I talked about when identifying the 21st century learner, and that's the ability to learn how to learn. And I think that without being able to formulate clear questions, to pursue a line of inquiry, and to be able to engage in active work and research, I think it's essential for success. With regard to something like writing, I think communication ability is essential. I think that regardless of a major a student chooses to pursue at university or what field they want to go into, the ability to communicate will be critical for their future success. That ability to write and formulate ideas. From my own perspective, if you can't explain what you're doing clearly through verbal communication and through writing, you will ultimately not be successful, no matter what kind of technical skills you develop or what knowledge of the discipline that you have. What's going to set a student apart and distinguish them is their ability to communicate.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I want to go back to Glenn because as a provider in this region, students and parents, they do demand the best. And I think having programs that give broad educational experiences is a unique selling point. How does the diploma, the IB Diploma, provide this broadening of students' educational experience?
That I would sort of bring to the front as one of the key aspects in differentiating it from other curricula and other frameworks. I think within the core, for those who are not familiar with it, there's opportunity for what we call the theory of knowledge, which essentially is an understanding of self. It's a study of the world we live in and how to better grasp that and understand who you are and the impact that we have on the world. There's the opportunity to explore the extended essay, which is a body of research the student engages with in an area of their own passion, but linked to their curriculum. And I think that's missing in so many curriculums where students don't have the opportunity to drive something that's important and passionate to them. But at the same time, they're getting the academic rigor and understanding of research, which is going to set them up beautifully for the higher education that they move on to, exactly as was just spoken about by Kevin. In addition to that, there's creativity, action, and service, which are key components of how a student understands who they are and how they can impact the world and gets involved. So you can't be passive and be successful in the IB. I mean, a great example of that would be our students at Greenfield International School who own an orphanage in India that they run in a philanthropic way, but they develop that as part of their business studies. The 2 business study units that they run, and these are CP students as part of the program, but they run that on an annual basis and continue to build and fund, and they're getting real life learning, but they're also making a difference. And it's a requirement in the IB. And I think, as Dina said before, one of the things that's significantly different about IB is you can have fantastic programs in some schools, and some schools do them very well by adding on to the curriculum that's there. IB requires it of you. It comes in the package. If you do it well, these things are going to be achieved, and that makes a massive difference to our students and their impact on both their own schools, their communities, and then globally.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not a product of the IB, and now I'm feeling a little bit like I've missed out. And my own children are not in an IB school, so now I'm starting to think, I mean, as a product of A levels myself, some of the things you just described, I did not do, nor did any of my siblings do that. And obviously, we tend to think, well, we want to matriculate to university, so we want to do something that will help us to get there. But the IB diploma is very well recognized. Let me go back to Dina. How well recognized is the DP for universities and governments?
I'm very proud to say that the diploma program is very well recognized, and our students have access to the top universities, the most prestigious universities in the world. Every year, we have over 5,000 universities in more than 100 countries that accept our students' applications and transcripts. We have wide recognition by colleges and universities around the world, and they recognize that the DP is a superior preparation for students to succeed at university. IB students go into university and they demonstrate themselves as self-motivated leaders. They contribute to the university life. They do well academically. And when we've done the research, I mean, this is not anything I'm making up. The research confirms that when you compare a DP student to a student from a national curriculum in different countries, the diploma program student does so much better. And then goes on to do better once they start working. So we have the research that confirms that, and I invite the audience to go onto our website and visit our research page, because there's a lot of great evidence to confirm this. We also work very closely with local and national governments to build partnerships to ensure that our diploma program is fully recognized. For an example I can give you is in the UAE, because I work closely with the Ministry of Education, ADEC in Abu Dhabi, KHDA in Dubai, SPIA in Sharjah, to ensure that our programs, which are now fully recognized, and thus our students, whether they're going from a UAE IB school or from a school abroad, can matriculate to UAE universities. So we have very good recognition across the world, across the globe.
Yeah. That's actually interesting, because, you know, there's such a plethora of curriculum on offer in this country. You do have to really narrow down the key benefits and why you would choose that. I want to find out from Glenn, why did Talim go with the IB diploma? I mean, versus all the other curriculum that are on offer?
Yeah, look, I think part of it is addressing parent demand, obviously. As an international curriculum within Dubai, where we have 93% expats, it addresses the international aspect of education exceptionally well. It was designed for that purpose. It's not a national curriculum, and we're not in a national setting and context purely in Dubai. So I think it addresses that really, really effectively. In addition to that, it is, as I said before, the full package of education comes complete within the IB. And where other curricula provide great education if it's done well, and you add on these programs and you fill the gaps in different ways, the IB requires it of you. And so our students, we know, are going to get a high standard of education by working through the program. And I think if our growing role is anything to go by as we move towards 20,000 students, it certainly speaks to parents as a program that is really successful. And one that is worth considering.
Yeah, I'm starting to become a bit of a convert, if I must be honest. I want to go to Professor Mitchell, because you are able to see students who matriculate from all the different curriculum, and we're talking about coming into university, and a lot of talk has been about how unprepared many students are for that jump to tertiary. Why is the IB diploma student more favorable as an entrant to university?
I think a word that's been mentioned previously, I've used it myself, is independence. I think that that kind of independence, the ability to approach work independently, to figure out issues, I think is a key to persistence in tertiary education. I think that often students who come to university, if we take just some of the kind of regional dynamics and the way that they impact students, we often see students who are quite protected up until the time they enter university. So they have been, they've been quite dependent on schools, on teachers, and that I think poses a great challenge when then you attempt to make that transition to university. Because it's not only about the work that occurs in the classroom, it's about figuring out the things for yourself and finding your way. And I think that what one sees within the curriculum itself and the way that it fosters that independence, the ability to learn how to learn and to pose problems for yourself, to pose questions for yourself, is a great benefit, not only in terms of the academic, but in terms of all of those other life decisions that a young university student will have to make and make on their own.
Yeah, it drives me back to something Glenn spoke about, because he was talking about his students going away and reflecting and working through problems in a way that is more beneficial to them, even in the world of work. So I can see how those skills would be very, very useful at university. And you have to think about the fact that if you are working on real world problems, when you get to university, that transition cannot be as difficult as for someone who has just sat and regurgitated content on an examination. And really, they haven't applied it, they haven't used it in any way. So that I can see as a key benefit already to the diploma. Want to go to Moza though, because she is currently at university, so she'll be able to help us out and shed some light on, you know, your current learning, your current work. Did studying the DP influence your higher education decisions, Moza? Was there a moment when you knew you wanted to pursue this pathway especially from taking the diploma in high school?
Yes, so currently I'm pursuing a passion for architecture, as I said earlier, by starting a bachelor program in architecture at the American University of Sharjah. And originally, I always had interest in fine art, spatial design, and also architecture. So this interest was further developed through my journey in the DP program. As a part of CAS, I had the privilege to participate in art and design workshops, which have turned my interest into a strong passion for architecture. And also, one of the scenarios that truly opened my mind to this field was during a visit of a Spanish architect, whom I was fortunate to meet him and visit a construction site of his own project. And he was also explaining his unique approach in spatial design and built-in environments. So I found that his approach was very distinctive and authentic, in my opinion. And this experience, I gained an in-depth insight into different architects and also different approaches, which have further developed independent research around this field.
Brilliant, thank you. I want to go back to something that Professor Kevin was talking about in terms of independence and getting your students to really take ownership for their learning. When students come to university, Professor Kevin, do you find that you as the lecturers have to spend time helping them to become more independent learners? I'm not talking about the IB Dip students now, I'm talking about students in general. Is that something that you've noticed?
I think that, yes, and I think this is a global phenomenon. I think that there is the need to provide stronger support services, and this is recognized as a part of higher education, that there is the necessity to provide that. There's a tension, of course, that exists because I don't, I think that those who are actually doing the teaching probably are going to spend less time with doing that kind of support. And of course, that results in issues around retention that many higher education institutions face, that students who are not successful tend to fall behind and lack the kind of persistence that would get them through university. So yes, I think it's a global issue. I think institutions recognize that and then develop support systems around it. And that's why if we go back to what are the characteristics of a student that would be accepted to university, that's one of the attributes that is looked at. What is the potential for success for the student in the field that they've chosen? Not only based on their academic performance, but as Glenn has mentioned, the kinds of things that they do beyond the classroom that demonstrate they have the ability to, I would say very fundamentally, manage the kind of demands on their time. Because often you find in a very highly structured environment, a student's time has been managed for them. Once you encounter much greater degrees of freedom in university, it's about managing one's own time. And I think it's often something we don't discuss, but I think it's fundamental to student success is how are they able during their secondary education experience, are they provided that freedom and flexibility that instills in them the ability to manage their own time, to begin to make decisions and to live with the consequences and readjust the decisions that they've made. Because I think that's, it's going to be fundamental for success in their later lives and certainly at university. Yes,
yeah, I do agree with that, because I know from just my small amount of research that the IB is often described as quite a challenging program, and it's not a walkover. But Dina, what is the profile of a DP student?
Lisa, if you're asking whether or not the DP is designed solely for high achieving academic students, and the answer is no. The DP it's a framework that offers enough flexibility that can be adapted to meet the needs of different students going into the program. And that's the beauty of it. It allows for the school to work with the student to focus on the student's strengths, but at the same time nurture their skills and develop this academic breadth that they need. So at the end of the 2 years, I'm going to use the phrase that Moza used, is that the DP allows for the development of the finest version of a student that have these skills that are needed, as Professor Kevin said, to be successful at university. So talking about critical thinking, communication, problem solving, self-management, leadership, research, writing, social skills, all these are important skills in addition to the solid academic breadth. So DP students, they're intellectual, they're ethical, they're culturally aware, they've been exposed to multiple languages, they excel academically, and they have this desire to learn. They're lifelong learners. We develop in them what all our programs developed was called the IB Learner Profile, which is a broad range of capacities and responsibilities that go beyond academic success. And it develops in these students internationally minded students who recognize the common humanity, shared guardianship, and they work together to help create the world a better and more peaceful place. So they have these skills, so they don't need to be high achievers to enter the DP. But throughout the 2 years, it is a rigorous program, and they will develop these skills to make them successful.
Yeah, I think we can't mistake rigor for difficulty. Just because it's rigorous doesn't make it difficult. And the fact that it's rigorous, it does mean that the students will have to put more effort in, but they'll get more out of it. Let's ask Glenn then. Your experience, you would have seen many students who would have gone through the IB Diploma program. And so I wanted to find out who do you think is suitable? Or do you think what type of students do you think it's suitable for?
Yeah, look, I think Dina answered that to a certain degree really well in the way that the programs are structured, because it is really available and attainable by all students. I mean, one of the interesting things about the IB, as Aristotle said, he said, education of the mind without education of the heart is no education at all. And I think IB puts the heart in education. It teaches people to be balanced. There's a set of profiles that tell us how to be good people. It teaches us to take action. It teaches us to understand the world we live in, who we are. We all know the woes and tragedies that occur within the world when we have really intelligent people that don't have a values base, that don't know how to connect with others, that don't know how to demonstrate a set of profiles, behaviors that make a good person. So I think all of our students need to have these things. We want that for everybody. What is nice about the IB is that the structure and the way the program is designed enables us to pick subjects to suit students that suit them. And therefore, if you know our students well, that helps us adjust the rigor. Whether they're going to do portfolio-based work because they actually succeed better in that environment, that will be some of their subject selection. If they're a really exam-driven and research-based person, then we're going to make some choices there to support them and design a program that's going to suit their needs and their passions and their interests, and therefore they'll find success. In addition to that, obviously there's tiers within the program of higher level subjects, standard level subjects. We've got the career-related program. There's a range of different options for all students. So I think it serves people really well. In addition to that, I would say, one of the key pieces is it doesn't narrow students' choice for subjects and interest in subjects too soon. Tragically, we see in some curriculum areas, you're making essentially your university decisions when you're 15, 16 years old. I didn't know what I was going to do when I was 15, 16 years old. So, for the IB student, they still have a breadth and depth of option and have some flexibility to say, look, at least they've studied math, they've kept a hand in language, they've kept a hand in humanities, etc., even if it wasn't one of their higher level subjects. And that enables them then to change tack at a later stage, which I think is really beneficial for all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. When you said we don't know what we wanted to do at 15 or 16, I started to think, what did I want to do when I was 15 or 16? I mean, anybody on the panel? I don't know if you remember. I can't remember. Can you? No. But Moza is closer to that age. So I wanna go to Moza and just find out from you, Moza, what was your experience? What were some of the challenges? What were some of the highlights, the key highlights for you from studying the IB diploma?
Okay, so to be honest, it was a bit challenging, yet it was very worthy and a unique experience. Looking at my journey through the IB, as I'm a full continuum graduate of the PYP and the MYP and the DP programs, I came across many situations where I needed to stretch myself and come out of my comfort zone to be able to challenge myself. Also, to overcome any challenges that I faced, I continuously enhanced and refined my learning skills and tried to develop an understanding of learning how to learn the best. I also believe that the comprehension of IB learner profile and how demonstrating the IB learner traits help individuals to develop into more passionate, innovative, and internationally minded people who are able and always willing to make a positive change in this world.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about the fact that even though it was challenging, you've still found it very, very useful, very good. Sometimes students will say, oh, that's difficult, I want to quit. But you persevered and pushed. And I think you're better for it, Moza. Well, I think you're better for having stuck with it and risen to the challenges that were posed to you in this program. So good on you. Dina, many top private schools, especially in this region, they choose the DP program for their students. Is the program restricted to any kind of school and a curriculum? What are the restrictions and what are the opportunities there?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because it's not the IB and the diploma program is not only for private, rich international schools. In fact, we are present in 159 countries. We have over 5,500 schools with 2 million students and seats every year. And over 52% of our schools are actually state schools or public funded schools. Having said that, we are working really hard to increase accessibility to our programs across the globe. And we're working very hard with governments to try to do this. For example, we've established agreements with different governments to do this. One example is in South Korea, where the first South Korean public schools were recently authorized to offer the diploma program. Also, on a recent visit, our Director General, our new Director General, Olli-Pekka Heinonen, visited Spain, where he met with the Regional Minister of Education for the state of Madrid, Enrique Osorio. And at that meeting, Mr. Osorio committed to expanding the IB programs in the public school system in Madrid starting this year, and we're already accepting applications. So we are moving forward in our expansion in the state sector. I work on the development team in this region, and my colleagues and I are working really hard. Those of us are working in countries in the Middle East and the Gulf. We are developing our relationships with the ministries of education to try to get the IB into the state sector in these countries, in the UAE, in Oman, in Jordan. We're really looking at ways to increase accessibility of our programs that way.
Yeah, I wonder in terms of it expanding, if, you know, with how well it helps students develop, I'm wondering how quickly that can expand, because we do hear a lot of, oh, we really want to develop 21st century learners, etc. But I think that the clock is ticking on that, and I really hope that it gets implemented a lot wider, a lot faster.
Yes, I mean, it's hard work. It's not easy. When we're looking at the state sector, we're looking at a commitment for budget, a commitment for staff. It's not an easy task, but we're making a lot of progress, and hopefully we can say in the next 10 years we can see a different landscape in the Middle East in terms of IB.
Yeah, and it does take a lot of training and retraining of the teachers as well, which is going to be very, very key in that implementations. Professor Kevin, for schools that are thinking about offering the DP to their students, how do you think this might help them to prepare their students for higher education in today's world? I know you spoke a lot about independence. Is there anything new you want to add in terms of how the DP program will help schools prepare their students?
I think it is that blend of academic rigor and what is beyond the academic that prepares students to be flexible. I would also go back to a word that's been mentioned by both Glenn and Dina, and that's the ethical. And it's something we really haven't discussed in great detail. And I think that ultimately that emphasis on the ethical, as someone with a bachelor's degree in philosophy, it's something very close to my heart. And I think that it is ultimately something that's going to be key for learners of the 21st century. Again, it's not only about technical skill, knowledge of the discipline, but it's how you put that knowledge to work in terms of service to a greater good. And I think that if we look at secondary educational institutions or programs in the region, they do really tend to focus on, they have strengths in certain subject areas, and the emphasis seems to be on the development of students academically, but not necessarily on the development of students on how the academic gets put into the service of a greater good. And I think that for me personally, that's one of the strong selling points of the IB program is that dimension, that it is really about what can you do to contribute to a greater good beyond yourself and beyond your discipline, while relying on your discipline and your field of work, again, as your fundamental basis. But how do you put that into service beyond a just a career? How can it become more?
Yeah, which goes back to what Glenn spoke about his students actually putting it into practice and even owning an orphanage. Was it an orphanage, you say, in India? And I was thinking, wow, you know, students doing something like that while they're in school will certainly stand them in great stead to become of service to humanity when they go out in the world of work. So thank you so much for sharing that. Dina, do you have any words of advice then for schools that may be interested in offering the DP in the future?
When a school wants to become an IB World School, they're joining a community of over 5,500 schools. And these schools are all delivering IB programs to students to help create a better and more peaceful world through cultural understanding and respect. This is not just a string of words. It's actually one of the first things we look at the school that wants to become an IB World School is their commitment to promoting the IB mission. That's very, very important. So the school will need to first get the buy-in of their school community. That means bringing in the parents, staff, board members, owners, students, to ensure that they are willing to make this commitment. And in some cases, it's a huge paradigm shift. But the outcome is definitely an improvement in teaching and learning, which benefits the students. It's a long process to become an IB World School, but throughout the process, we have dedicated teams to support the school to ensure that once they become an authorized school, they're ready to take it on. We work with them very closely to make sure that happens.
Fantastic. I just put in the chat a link. If you want to learn more about the IB Diploma, then there is a link that I've just put in the chat, and I've just glanced at the time and realized that we have been at this, but it's such a great conversation. I've myself personally have learned so much from it. So I want to open the opportunity to our wonderful audience who have stuck with us. So I do have a question here. Right, it says, do you think 21st century development skills that you are seeking to integrate into your teaching course, which part is more important for success? So which one of the 21st century skills, essentially, they're asking which one is more important for success or effective results? I'm gonna put that to Glenn, since you're in the schools and you're with the students, seeing them, which of these, and I'm not sure there are any that is more important than the others, but let's say, how do you rank them if you could in terms of importance?
Yeah, look, it's a really challenging one, and I don't think, I mean, if they were to be ranked in terms of importance, then the IB would have done so. One of the things that I would say to me is one of the most important aspects of what we look at when developing our learners is the learner profile. And that's that set of attributes or behaviors that not only our students have to demonstrate and live out, but our teachers and our parents are asked to buy into. It's the language that starts to become known within the school. It's what you share. It's the way that you act. And so when you start to have that happening regularly within the school environment, then you have a culture developed. And when you have a great culture, then great learning exists. So I think for me, probably if I was to pick out one aspect of the IB that is fundamental, it's bringing the human aspects of good people alive within our schools, and asking teachers and parents to also demonstrate those attributes.
Brilliant. I've just got a thank you for a wonderful webinar. So I want to thank all of you for a wonderful webinar. But she also has a question, and she says, this is Melissa Butt, that do you know any IB schools in Yorkshire, UK, that she could visit? I'll put that to Dina. Maybe she could tell you how to find out where they are.
Melissa, I invite you to go to our website, ibo.org. And if you scroll to the bottom of the front page, the home page, you'll see find an IB school link, and you can search by country. And if you put in the UK, you'll get all the schools that are available there, and you can find the one that's probably closest to you that you could visit. There are also links to contact the schools directly. So hopefully that will be helpful.
Thank you. I've got another question here, which is one that I was thinking about. So there is a cost associated with the IB diploma. And so Afras wants to know, so what can be done to make it available to countries that aren't able to afford it? So African countries, the person mentioned Uganda, Nigeria, etc., rural areas of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Philippines, etc., etc. So Dina.
That's a very good question. And it really is in line with our increasing accessibility to our program. So it's something that we're really looking at. Our programs are expensive. We have annual fees that have to be paid. But in addition to that, we require continuous professional development. So one of the things we've already put in place is that we've developed online professional development that offer the same workshops that are required, but at a huge discounted price as opposed to face-to-face workshop. So that has brought down the cost of implementing the IB greatly. But I know especially for the continent of Africa, we are really looking at ways, the continent of Africa, we're looking at ways to increase accessibility, and that will require that we find ways to deliver our programs at a lower cost. So watch this space. Hopefully we'll be able to develop models that will allow for that and allow for more IB students and an increased access to IB education in all these areas that you mentioned. Afros for that question.
Yeah, no, I really was thinking that when we were talking, just thinking about access and about equity. And so, yes, I'm really glad to hear that's being looked at. I think we have time for just one more question and that one's from someone who wants to know, has there been any research done into the performance of IB diploma graduates when compared to A-level program graduates when they are in universities? Who can take that? Glenn, can you take that one for us?
Yeah, certainly. I think you'll find some of the information regarding that on the IB's research page that Dina was referring to earlier. Certainly, whilst, as I said before, in good A-level schools, you can have students who are highly successful, go on to do amazing things, who have had support in a range of different ways. Research tells us at the moment that IB students are more successful when it comes to access to university and completion rates of those courses. And so, again, great education can happen in all sorts of different environments. What the IB does is says the likelihood of that occurring in an IB structure and framework is more evident and happens on a more regular basis.
Yeah. Dina, anything to add to that?
No, as I said before, we have a lot of research published on our website. We have done comparative studies with the A-levels that Glenn mentioned, but also there's similar studies done with APs in the US, and all of them point to the same evidence that DP students going into universities do better, have a higher rate of retention, have a higher rate of moving on to higher education, to further education. They seem to get better jobs, better paid jobs. So the data, the research that we have really is very positive in terms of DP compared to all other national curricula. And when I say that, I was specifically thinking of, in my mind, AP and A-levels. Brilliant.
Wow, we've come to the end of this webinar. I want to say a massive thank you to our panelists, Professor Kevin Mitchell, Glenn, I won't pronounce the last name, Mosa Ibrahim, Dina Khalaf. It's been really, really enlightening. And thank you to our audience who stuck with us. Really glad to see so many of you and so active in the chat and so very gracious to give us your time today. We're very, 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 very grateful. Thank you very much. My name is Lisa Grace, and it's been a pleasure to host this webinar on behalf of IB. Thank you very much and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.